I was at a talk over the weekend on mental resilience, and I want to share kind of what I've learned from that talk and what I've learned over the last few months. Because to be fair, in anything, if it's a relationship, if it's work, if it's an entrepreneurial pursuit, you really have to develop your mental resilience. And I don't think it's talked about enough. So what is it? It's your capacity for stress. It's your capacity for challenge. We did a talk. I keep hosting these University of Life talks. Very selfishly, if I'm honest, I'm using it for my own learning and my own upskilling. But they're really interesting, and if you are interested, just go to www.theuniversityoflife.com, and you'll see all the talks we're doing and the subjects we're covering. But anyway, I invited this guy Sean Conolly to speak. He's a wellness coach or a life coach who really has dedicated his life to the space. Works with athletes, works with all sorts of people. He talked about mental resilience in a really personal sense. He walked in on his brother having committed suicide. His wife actually died of a cot death beside him. Now she actually persevered and came back, which I thought was really, really interesting. But he talked all about actually how he worked with her to come back, and how he worked with himself in terms of getting through those challenges. Because to be fair, a lot of those challenges are really, really challenging, and they can be crushing. And there's all sorts of other things in life that can really, really challenge you. And if you haven't worked on or developed your mental resilience, they're going to get on top of you, and you're not going to do yourself justice. So, interestingly, his talk centered around the most impacting thing that you can do to develop your mental resilience is gratitude. And this is something I shared in a couple of videos. I remember somebody said this kind of really cringy tip, I thought, at the time. They said, look, before you go to bed, think about 3 things you're grateful for. And before you get out of bed in the morning, think about 3 things that you're grateful for. And that actually, as a wellness tip, has probably been one of the most effective tips I've had. It's like it resets your mind, because we almost instinctively think negatively. And, if we're letting negative thoughts just develop and fester in our heads, that takes a toll. But on the flip side of that, if you reset it with good, positive thoughts before you go to bed or before you take on the day, it's almost like you're planting seeds of positivity in your head that grow while you sleep or grow throughout the day. Sounds a bit weird, but it's actually amazingly effective. Anyway, he talked about this, and he talked about this in a way that really, really aligned with me. And so I'm going to tell my story. Hopefully you can get value from it, and hopefully it'll make sense for you. So for me, when I think about my entrepreneurial journey, and I look back on it, probably the biggest regret, and I hate people that say they don't have regrets and everything like that, because come on, there is things that you look back and you go, I wish I did things differently. The thing for me is that I wish I actually acknowledged and appreciated myself. I wish I appreciated the stumbling blocks. I wish I appreciated the successes enough. I didn't. And there's another video that I kind of somewhat talk about these topics, but I wanted to zone in on it for here. Whenever I had a failure, I massively indulged in it at any level. Like, I could trip up and I'd go, oh, for God's sake, I'd stump my thumb, and I'd knock myself over and over and over again. And all of that takes a toll. And if you have ambitions for yourself, if you have wants for yourself, if every time something negative happens, you're crucifying yourself, you're mentally draining yourself, you're making it all the more challenging to pick yourself up and take on whatever lofty ambitions you've set for yourself. Whereas on the flip side of that, if every time something bad happens, perhaps, instead of indulging in the negative, you're looking at it and going, okay, well, this didn't happen the way I wanted to, but at least I know this way doesn't work. And at least I know perhaps a way that might work now that I've learned a mistake from it. Looking at the value of mistakes and actually looking at the positives you get from it is strengthening. It's actually almost exciting. It's like, okay, well, this didn't work, but now look, we know that didn't work, and it's presented a couple of options of which perhaps might work. So looking at the excitement, looking at the positives that you get from every negative, that's strengthening. So instead of draining yourself and knocking yourself down, you're actually going, okay, this is brilliant, and you're picking yourself up a notch. And then if you couple that with every time something good happens, giving yourself credit for that. And that could be something simple as I met such and such a person today. I did myself justice today. I learned a lot through all those failures today. It could be acknowledging very much failures as positives, exactly as I've said. But if you reinforce those positives, you're reinforcing, almost rejuvenating your headspace. And that's making it all the easier to then take on a bigger challenge and reach whatever, as I said, ambitions you've set for yourself. So he zoned in on this exercise and he said that that is the biggest tool you can employ to develop your mental resilience. And if you think about it, it makes sense. You'll get excited about challenges. You'll get excited about obstacles, about any potential bad things that might happen, because you know you're going to learn from it. You're constantly using any opportunity around you to build yourself up as well, to feel positive. That makes a hell of a lot of sense. I'm going to be much more able to take on stress or challenge if I'm constantly building myself up in here mentally. And if I'm not, and actually if I'm doing the opposite, I'm going to get bowled over really, really easily. So I think it's really important to think about mental resilience, not just if you're pursuing a career in business, but just full stop. And I think it's really, really important that you actually work on yourself when it comes to mental resilience, because we're all challenged. And it's so sad seeing people where things get on top of them. And it's actually, I think, so positive seeing people overcome issues and everything like that. And for me, this is, I think, the greatest tool that will actually ultimately help you overcome whatever inevitable challenges will come your way. So I hope they bring you value.